In my experience, we take the very best salespeople in your organization and we take them off the street and we put them behind a desk and call them sales managers. They may not be great sales managers and they may not be able to help their sales team grow, and things start to fall apart when we do that. We actually end up weakening our sales team and weakening our management team. All right, enough about that from me. Our guest today is Matt Rocco from Sandler by the Ruby Group. We're going to talk about making your sales team stronger next. Well, the heat is on. Let's get cooking. This is Purpose Under Pressure. It's a podcast about people just like you and me, regular old folks. We get up in the morning, we swing our legs out of bed, we put our feet on the floor, and we go to work. Why do we go to work? How do we go to work? And what happens along the way that wants to knock us on our butts? Because that's what happens on a daily basis. It's called pressure. And what do we do to respond? That's when you know whether you're on purpose or not. It's pressure and purpose. Purpose Under Pressure. That's the name of the show. If you're back, thank you for coming back. And if you do like this show, please go ahead and give us a thumbs up or a follow. Maybe share it with a friend. Let someone know that it's here. It's how we're going to get the word out about the show. It's how we're going to impact lives and make a difference. And I do appreciate you doing that for us. Purpose Under Pressure is brought to you by Sandler by the Ruby Group, serving sales professionals nationwide from their Akron and Columbus, Ohio locations. They are also in Jacksonville, Florida, and we're going to talk about that today. Sandler by the Ruby Group provides sales training, business growth for sales training or sales professionals and sales organizations that are trying to make a difference. They're trying to gain revenue. They're trying to increase their relationships with their customers, but they're trying to do it right. And see, that's where the difference is. It's not a bunch of cliches. It's not a bunch of hooks or canned closes. Sandler by the Ruby Group teaches you what's right, what's wrong, what to do, what not to do to build a better relationship with your salespeople, with your organization, and most importantly, with your customers. It's going to make a difference in the long term. We're going to talk about that today, but I hope that you will check them out online at therubygroup.sandler.com. I talked a little bit about what we're going to talk about today. One of the fun things about this show, since the Ruby Group is a kind of a partner with what we're doing, and because they're all so amazing at what they do, I like to have them on the show. And we've had a few. We've had Mike Jones and Ken Guest and Jordan, and we've had Robert, and we've had so many different people from Sandler. And I'm really excited we have another one today. I'm excited to introduce you to Matt Rocco. He's a sales trainer and a coach with Sandler by the Ruby Group in Jacksonville, Florida. Matt, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Brian. Glad to be here and looking forward to diving into things.
I'm looking forward to it too. Now, you're not doing typical sales things because right now people are like, what's he doing on the podcast? He ought to be out closing sales. It's a numbers game. I don't think that's always the case. I've been a salesperson for 35 years, and I think there's a different way of doing it. And I think you guys at Sandler by the Ruby Group kind of prove that. So, Matt, introduce yourself a little bit. Talk to folks about what you're up to, what's great, what your purpose is, kind of what your role is there at Sandler by the Ruby Group.
Absolutely. So based out of Florida pretty much my whole life. When I was real young, my father moved me here. So growing up in this area, and a couple years ago was approached by someone that was out recruiting, finding someone that the Ruby Group was based out of Ohio, Columbus, Akron, and they wanted to expand into another market. So they looked at Jacksonville, Florida, and they had, within the last, 5 to 8 months, they had purchased the franchise, successful existing franchise in Jacksonville. Mm-hmm. And the gentleman, Pat McManaman, who's there, kind of had a goal to phase out. At some point, he's going to want to retire, not do as much training and coaching as he's always done. And so the Ruby Group said, well, we'll find someone to come in and really continue to establish and build out the book of business in Jacksonville. So a little over 2 years ago, I came on board with the Ruby Group and started out spending quite a bit of time in Ohio. I always joked that I must have brought the snow with me because it was January and it snowed every time I showed up. But based in Florida, really going to market, going after any type of a business that has at least 5, 6 full-time salespeople, and their main focus, like you already referenced, was driving top line revenue, right? We want businesses that are very forward thinking, because you do run into businesses that are pretty content where they're at. They're in a comfort zone. They want to stay there. We're really looking for the ones that are wanting to expand and grow. So I spend, I'd say 60% of my time every day doing business development, going out there talking to businesses and finding out what their goals are, and just growing and expanding Jacksonville, all of Northeast Florida.
Yeah. And that business development part, I mean, that is sales. That's what it is developing those relationships, but it's so hard. I remember telling Mike, it's just and Ken says, you don't have to like it. You just have to do it. It's a little phrase that Ken Guest says.
Right.
I always had trouble. I loved the fact when it was always great when someone wanted to talk to me. I really had trouble opening that conversation. That's really all you're doing. 60% of the time, you're trying to open those new conversations. What's your secret? What works? What doesn't? I'm sure some salespeople right now are having the same issues.
Yeah, and I'm sure. And so let's take it a step back. So you've got every person that's out there doing business development, every seller, we all have different personality styles. So a lot of what I'm going to share today will be based on kind of who Matt is and the things that I do.
Mm-hmm.
We do a lot when it comes to assessments. And one of them that we do is a DISC assessment. And in the DISC world, I'm a high I, which means that I'm pretty extroverted. I enjoy being out there talking with people, doing, just constantly going out there and making conversations. I'm enjoy that fully. And it also means that I'm going to typically chase the shiny object. And I'm going to be going out there and, oh, is there a new way to get the right people to raise their hand and say, hey, we need what you have. Okay. Mm-hmm. 2 years into it, what I'm able to do is say, okay, yeah, there's a lot of things that you can do to get certain people to raise their hand and say, hey, I'm someone who needs what you do. But at the end of the day, staying true to what works is going to be making phone calls, doing a mix of some networking that needs to be done where you're going out to specific industries and just talking with people in that, and sending emails. It really might sound a little boring. And if you're consistent with the behaviors over and over and over, some might call that a boring thing. But some of the best salespeople do the same thing consistently over and over, and they're not out constantly trying to find some new gimmick to get people to come to you. And they say, I'm just going to stick with what I know works, which is getting out there and really getting after it.
And so when you're out there getting after it, you've got a mission. There's a job that you want to do, but the person on the other side isn't ready. Mm-hmm. Like ever. They didn't go to the networking thing to meet a Sandler rep. They went for something else, the free hot dogs or whatever it was. And there you are. Yeah. How do you balance? Look, I need to get this done. I got a goal. I've got a mission. I've got a thing I got to do, with respect for the person on the other side, to make sure that you're not overstepping your bounds. The hard thing people think about sales is, I don't want to be pushy. I can't be that guy. And you don't have to be. How do you overcome some of those issues?
So we are right now in a very heavily trust-based era where if someone's going to choose to do business with you, there's something that you've done to establish rapport. There's some bonding that's been done. And all of a sudden there's enough trust there to where they maybe would listen to something that you have to say, and they would be open to something that you might bring up. And so when you're out having these conversations, or you're making calls or sending emails, it can be very important that you are presenting situations that you're currently solving. So you go to market, and this would be just if someone is even maybe new to sales or has been doing it for a long time, what 90-something% of the sellers out in the marketplace are doing is they're showing, we have a reference to showing up and throwing up, show up and throw up, mm-hmm. which is actually working against you when it comes to creating that trust and establishing.
What's that mean, show up and throw up? You just you knock on the door and somebody says hello and blah, 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 right?
Yeah. Or you're at a networking event and they ask the question, what do you do? And blah, it comes out. And what, in comparison to that, what I'm doing is I'm traditionally going out there, meeting with people, create a little bit of that bonding, create that trust. And then I start to just find out, I maybe share a few scenarios of things that I've solved recently for other businesses. Mm-hmm. And Sandler coins it, our 30-second commercial, where we are focusing on issues that traditionally someone's dealing with. And then I just put it back to them and say, is there by chance any of that going on in your world?
Mm-hmm.
Or maybe it's, hey, I'm guessing that's not anything you're dealing with. And that's kind of a hook, so to speak, to pull them in. And if they are dealing with it, they're going to quickly tell you, no, actually, I'm dealing with that and that. Or there's plenty of times where they say, no, we're pretty good.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, good. I'm glad to hear it.
Yeah, that's always good. When the other person is good, everybody's good. That's kind of, as a human nature, that's kind of what we want. I want to ask you one more question personally, and then I want to talk a little bit about the people that you sell to and issues that they are trying to overcome. Personally, you seem like a nice guy and you want to build trust, and they still say no. Do you take that personally? Why don't they trust me? Or how do you overcome that? Because you're trying to build a book of business. You're looking for yeses. You've given the right reasons. You've done the right things. You're relationally and you're trustworthy, and they still say no. What do you do with that?
So a big part of being successful in sales is keeping things straight up here. And so there is a lot of work that we do as coaches and trainers to help people with their attitude and their mindset. And sometimes you think of the word attitude and you think, well, I got to have a positive attitude, got to have a good attitude. No, attitude kind of really controls the way you see yourself conceptually, the way you see your marketplace, the way you see the clients that you're calling on. Mm-hmm. And the only way that I've found and what I coach to in keeping that straight, because there are people who are going to say no, I don't have an interest in working with you, is you really are out seeking for that. So it's a mindset shift. Instead of you going to a networking event and you're saying, I want to spend my time looking for these people. What I'm doing is I'm going to that networking event and I'm looking to see, is there anyone out there who can convince me that they have a big enough of an issue that I could jump in and maybe be a part of creating a solution.
I see. Okay. So it's not that you're going, I was thinking you were saying the go for the no approach. You're actually like, look, you need to, I'm not sure I'm right for you. It's kind of both ways. You have to really kind of both want each other. Is that right? That's
you do.
Good recipe.
Yep. And it's not, you're there to where if someone wants some advice or some help, you'll give it. But to actually be to the point where it's worth setting a prospect meeting where we're going to do a deeper dive into your business, hear what's going on, there's got to be something pretty specific you're looking for.
Yeah.
You got to discover who those are.
And so what are those kinds of things? Because during the show already, you've shown yourself to be a trustworthy, honest, not salesy kind of guy. And so there are certain things that a business is probably struggling with that might click with you and say, yeah, maybe I can help them. So give me some ideas in today's day and age.
Yeah.
What are these businesses struggling with now that maybe would show that, well, maybe I have a sales problem. Maybe I need some training. What would those be?
It could be, so you've got businesses that have a team that's fully remote. Okay. They're all in different places, different markets, calling on different things. And sometimes a leader says, my people are good. I trust them. But at the same time, I don't know from an accountability standpoint what they're doing every single day. I don't know if I'm getting the max out of each of them that I could. So sometimes there's a little bit of that accountability and the tracking that needs to be enhanced or changed in the way that they're doing it. Other times there's not a common sales language amongst the reps. So you might have 7 to 8 different reps and everyone's brought into the world of your business the way they've always done sales. The way they call on a client, the way they grow that book of business is just their own personal style and flavor. And although it's a big part of what's made them successful, as an organization, we can't all move into the same thing without at least establishing, here's some pretty common sales language that we're all going to use. Here's a process that we're going to all consistently use. So when that's missing, we'll come in and introduce the Sandler methodology, and there's going to be a new path forward that the entire team can follow.
Where do you find, Matt, the biggest problem? Is it in the team or is it in the management? typically?
Many, many times it is the leadership.
Yeah.
There's
I say that
so
because I'm
much.
not a manager. So it's always
Yeah.
somebody else's fault.
No, and I've heard other, sales leaders in this coaching, sales coaching. There was one I was just listening the other day where the conversation was about, does someone have to be quote unquote a cultural fit to go into your organization and be successful in sales? And there's such an emphasis on that when really, if you can plug them into things that work, a process that works, a system that works, give them the right tools, coach them, make sure the training's there. If the individual has a desire to finance a lifestyle where they're able to buy stuff and pay their bills and take care of their family, they likely can be a fit. And
Mm.
culturally, they may not do the same things as every single sales rep. So I think that a lot of times the blocker to success for sales reps is the leaders or the lack thereof. They don't sometimes know what they don't know, and not having really something to rally around, to where you've got people that are brought on, they're given a few ideas of what they should do, they run at it for 90 days. And if that doesn't work, if for some reason they didn't get what they needed from leadership to really get to that next level, their numbers aren't there. And a lot of times they get the boot. And it's a leadership issue.
It's a leadership issue. So I imagine that when you're bringing a new business on, you're not typically bringing a salesperson on. You're bringing a business on, and that means you're selling to the leadership. I'm interested in this. How does the leader sway to realize that he needs to, or she needs to, do something different? It's in my experience, the leader says my salespeople aren't working. They're not making the calls. They're not, putting it in the CRM. They're not taking care of business.
Yeah.
And yet there might be a different, like you said, all the different things that Sandler can bring. How do you change the mindset of a leader who's been there, done that, and just wants to teach his salespeople, but maybe could use a fresh approach? How do you change that?
Well, think of it from the standpoint, if we were to put on a sales hat of a rep who was working within a manufacturing world,
Mm-hmm.
and they're going into a specific company who needs their manufactured item, and they sit down with the owner and they've got the specific little item that they know needs to be replaced, but there's a lot behind the scenes that goes into that. There's the resources behind when it's not there, who's having to call, what's the interruption, what's the downtime. There's a lot of things that go into what you're actually bringing to the market. And that's what we help teach you, how to get below the surface, right? You've got the little indicator up at the top of why they might call you in there, but you've got to really dig down into it to see what's causing the issues. And that's what we do with the business owner. Like, you might tell me, hey, my initial issue is I don't know quite what the reps are doing. Well, let's look at it and say, let's dive into what are you doing from an accountability standpoint? What are you telling them they need to do? How are you tracking it? How are you measuring it? Are you inspecting what you've asked of them? So it's a process just to unwrap. You start here at the top and you kind of unpack it, and you start to, in those conversations, all of a sudden you've touched on 3-4 things where the owner's like, I didn't bring you in here for that, but I'm glad you mentioned it, because now that it came up, that is an issue in our organization.
Yeah. And it's a long-term approach, isn't it, that you take? So one of the questions I have is, how long does it typically take in a long-term approach? I know you're fixing things down deep, which means it takes a little bit of time to turn around. However, in today's world, we don't always have time. We've got numbers to hit and projections to reach. How do you counteract the I need it now versus I want it done right mentality?
Looking at the typical salesperson, everything they do day in and day out, if we simplify all of that and really boil it down, they have 2 superpowers. First superpower that salespeople have is how they behave. Second superpower they have is what they say. As a seller, we only have 2 problems. We either said something or did something that we should not have said or done, or we didn't say something or do something that we should have said or done.
how do you counteract the I need it now versus I want it done right mentality?
You eventually want to get to, and I'll answer this in a way of saying you eventually want to get to the point where you are very unconsciously competent in what you're doing in sales. You just, if there's habits,
competent.
You're very good at what you're doing. You don't have to think about it, but you've got a process you follow and you do it really, really well. Okay. When you start out and you're first looking at a new methodology or you're looking at a new system to do, you are unconsciously incompetent. You don't know anything about it. You don't know why you would do it or that you should. And you aren't great at it. But through time, creating habits, through repetition, doing something over and over and over, you can get to where it's like driving down the road. Your subconscious tells you that light's yellow, you're going to need to stop, and you just do it. Or sometimes you might be driving along and all of a sudden you think to yourself, were those lights red or green? But you're just driving. Like your body knows what to do. The only way to get there is over time. And so David Sandler, one of his original books was, you can't teach a kid to ride a bike at a seminar. And the idea is that there is a lot of sales training and coaching. That's a hoorah, come in for 2 days, come in for 1 day, get some new ideas. But as adults, we don't retain as much as you think. It's a very small percentage of what you actually hold up here from like a 2-day event. And so the only way you're going to get to where you just are doing stuff by default, those habits, is probably 9 to 12 months. And that's with consistent use. So some of the best individuals that I've worked with on a training level. So you've got, everyone comes to the table with a desire for something that's at a different level. Some want it as much as they're breathing. And when they have that outlook towards it, they're going to take advantage of everything that they can. They're probably in something on a weekly basis, reinforcing, and they're probably spending 5 to 6 hours minimum a month where they're just locked in, loaded, using it. And then they're keeping journals and they're tracking what was my attitude, what were my behaviors, all of that.
I know in my past, I was very stubborn. I remember I told Mike, I don't need training, but my sales team does. And that was the most ridiculous thing. And I learned that was a stupid thing for me to say because I needed it very badly. But there were things that I liked and things I didn't like. But the things that I embraced, man, it made a huge difference. Little things like journaling and keeping an account and those little things that you think, how's that going to make me an extra $1? It's doing it the right way. And it really does make a difference. So I'm interested a little bit in the future because right now it's here it is, 2025. It's a whole new world. There's talk of tariffs and economy, and maybe it's not a whole new world. We've been battling these same arguments forever. But what do you see that a business owner or a business manager, sales manager is going to have to deal with, salesperson, in the future? What's the next round of issues that they're going to have to be ramped up and ready to cross that you see in kind of taking shape now?
I mean, I think a big part of this is going back to the mindset piece, right? What is our attitude on ourselves personally? What is our attitude on the marketplace that we're in? So if you adopt a mindset that things have slowed down drastically because of the tariffs, well, guess what? In your world, they have, right? So I think that's a big part of it. How do you view your company? Are you internalizing the challenges that maybe you have as an organization? We start to believe in sales that we're the only company with those issues. And the grass is going to look greener on the other side. If I were to be over at such and such company, they're not dealing with those things. And my background is sales in many walks. And I will tell you, you go from one frying pan to the other. Might be a different set of issues, but there's issues across the board, right?
Yep.
So keep your mind right, first and foremost. Be ready to say, it doesn't matter what the marketplace. Now, there may be pivots that have to happen. Remember back in COVID, there was companies that if you didn't choose to pivot, you were going to be without business. If you were bringing people in for an in-person type thing, or you were going out and meeting with prospects and it was all in person, now all of a sudden you had to pick up the phone, you have to make a pretty quick pivot. So if something within your marketplace, I don't want to be ignorant, if something within your marketplace changes, you may have to pivot. And guess what? Get out of your comfort zone and figure out a way to still get after that business.
Mm-hmm.
But I will tell you also that there are tools that are being introduced every day into the selling marketplace that are allowing us to be more efficient. And so maybe you're losing out on a certain sector because of a tariff or something that changes. But then if you can add a technology component in on the other side to where you're able to do something more efficiently, better, you should be able to offset to where you're not seeing, at the end of the day in sales, someone who has a book of business that is like a roller coaster, it's not something that you can even put, you can't come and say in the month of January, February, March, I'm going to do this amount of business because it's just one of these.
Yeah.
And a big part of that is because of the inconsistency of the salesperson. So there are tools out there that allow certain things to be done on default, programmed in to where you're not having to, as a sales rep, have to remember to do those things consistently. So I would say lean in very heavily in the future into technology. Let different AI tools do some of the components that make you stronger, more efficient. I mean, the old way of selling and the way to grow a marketplace as a business was you brought on a lot of reps and you expanded into new territories. And the more you wanted to grow as a business, the more reps you brought in. They had very few tools that those reps would use, and they just go out there and they beat the street.
Hammer it. Yep.
The new way, the new salesperson is you have fewer reps who are very trained. They're the top of their game. They're using a lot of tools that allow them to do what they do consistently without having to remember it all on their own. They're leaning into the tools, and from there they make a lot of sales.
Yeah. So those hurdles that some of us see coming down the line that are technology based. I'm 58 years old, and I'm not going to lie to you. I don't know that I completely understand everything that's so new, but that's a mindset. I can go out and learn it, but do I want to? There's that whole thing. You're saying embrace it, figure it out, and put it to work for you. Do you help people with that kind of thing too? Isn't some of those new tools?
Yeah, absolutely do. Just because there's new things coming in the marketplace. Let's say that there's 100 things coming out every single month. Of those, maybe you need 1% to 2% are actually a fit in your world. One of them, but absolutely will help people identify what could be a game changer. And it starts by just saying, would you be willing to acknowledge that there are some technologies that are very helpful? There is a lot out there that's going to make the world a place you and I probably don't want to grow up in and raise kids and grandkids.
Never know. Yeah.
Right. Hard to say. If machines start becoming where they're trying to tell us what to do, then
we got a problem.
I'm not going to be real happy.
I've been doing that. I've been saying thank you to ChatGPT and to my Siri all the time. And because I think that if they do take over, I want them to be nice to me.
That's hilarious.
So I actually type it in. When I ask them for something, I'll type in, thank you very much. You did a great job. And my wife thinks I'm nuts, but I don't want them coming after me because I'm rude.
Yeah. All right. So there's a group of people that flat out don't want any of these technologies, right? And they're just like, I hate AI or I hate ChatGPT.
Yeah.
And I'm like, okay, you're welcome to have that opinion. Go for it. But
power to you.
I do think there will come a day in time where those that have adopted some of the capabilities and the components that allow you to do things quicker and more efficiently, they will be ahead of those that said, I don't want anything to do with it.
No doubt about it. It's funny.
No judgment either way.
I think with the advent of AI and the older generations, like, what do you need that? What do you need with that? You're cheating, whatever the words might be. We don't use ponies to deliver the mail anymore. We don't dig holes with stone. We actually use electricity and running water. And
Yeah.
at some point in life, those would have been called cheats. I have a computer that I carry in my pocket that when I was a kid had no idea that I had to I had to read the encyclopedia to know things. It's not a
Right.
cheat. It's keeping up with the world and not letting it pass you by. And it's okay to use the tools that have been created for you. In fact, it's going to help you. I've got one quick question, Matt, and then I'll let you
Sure.
go.
Sure.
You seem to me to be a guy that kind of has a big BS filter. Like you can see through things. I have a feeling you've got that ability. If someone were to stop to you and say, look, I'm not going to hire you, but I got 3 seconds. Tell me what I need to do as a salesperson. And you don't know this guy from Adam.
Yeah.
90% of the time, if a salesperson were to do one thing, what's the one thing that all of us could benefit from in tweaking and kind of trying to make ourselves better?
Man, get really good at asking questions and get dialed in on making sure that as a seller, the majority of the talking is done by the prospect.
Bingo. Yep. That's exactly right. Because why? Go ahead and tell people why that matters.
I mean, I think your quality of, if I were to be hiring a sales rep, I would be gauging it based on the amount of information they can gather versus the information that they can dispense. And in fact, I'd rather someone who knows absolutely nothing about the features and benefits of my organization, but they're really good at reading people, picking up on body language, picking up on the tonality that someone's using, and knowing what someone's saying without them saying it. You got to get really good at reading what the prospects are actually saying, even though they won't be giving you words.
I love that. I told you before the show, I've got a little bit of Sandler background in me, just enough to make me dangerous. And I know that you're supposed to ask those questions. And so while I was getting ready to ask you the question, what does everybody need to know? I'm thinking to myself, he's not going to know what everybody needs to know. He's going to want to know more about the person. He's going to ask the person. And that's exactly what you said. You need to learn more. I recently bought a car and they walked up to me and said, what's the thing you want in your car? And I said, a sunroof. It's all I said. And don't you know, he started showing me every single car on the lot and every single thing. And he didn't ask, well, why do you want a sunroof, or where are you going with your sunroof? Or isn't it too cold for a sunroof?
It can be painful.
He just started selling it. It was like, no, ask me about the sunroof, man.
Yeah.
I want to tell you all about the sunroof.
Brian, it's so good that you said that. That's a golden nugget takeaway. Anyone listening to this, there are times you as a buyer have been there with a salesman or saleswoman that does not do it well, and you are just pleading internally for them to ask, just give me one more question.
Come on.
Ask me something more. And they don't do it. And you're like, oh, okay, we're just looking, right? At that point, a lot of times as a buyer, you just give up.
Yeah.
The average salesperson asks, you're going to think this number is huge. How many questions do you think an average salesperson asks?
A good salesperson, an average salesperson?
Average.
Oh, gosh. 3.
Yeah, it's 2.6.
Yeah, see, well, that's because I've been there. And it ought to be what? As many as it takes.
Yeah.
It ought to be at least 10. I mean, I can't learn anything just by hearing you give me an answer and then being done. There's got to be a follow-up. There's got to be well, why do you say that? Well, what does that mean? There's got to be a way to get the truth, not just so I can use it to make a sale, but so that I can understand you better, right? Isn't that what we're all in this for?
It is. And that's the thing. Sales reps are so proud of the organization they represent. They're proud of their expertise. And there is some psychology behind, through the years, what they've been rewarded for knowing. You know, they get a gold sticker from the teacher when they answer something right in school. So there's a lot behind it. Yeah. So just be willing as a seller to say, okay, maybe there's a new way I need to look at things. And that's a big part of what Sandler does.
How do people reach you in Jacksonville, Florida, if they're interested in learning more about what you do?
So email matt.rocco, ROCCO @sandler.com, or they can call my mobile number, cell phone. I don't know what you call it these days. 404-731-4947.
Can also text that number. Is that okay?
Yep. 404-731-4947.
So, folks, that's Matt Rocco. He's a sales trainer and coach down in Jacksonville, Florida, which I just think, I mean, is it hard to get out of bed, like off the porch in Jacksonville, Florida? If I was in Jacksonville, Florida as a sales trainer right now, I would suck because I'd be sitting there under the sun going, I'll make those calls later. Do you ever have to deal with that?
You know what? In
Come on,
sales,
tell the truth.
you should give yourself goals and rewards.
There you
And
go.
one of the things that you got to do when you live in Florida is you stay committed to getting the process done, getting things done, and then you reward yourself and saying, "Hey, once you're done with those dials, you can go walk around outside and enjoy the
Go
fresh,
get some
warm air."
sand under your toes. So if
Yep.
you're interested in some sand and some sales training, and here's one of the things that I understood back when I was a sales manager. When I would ask a salesperson, well, why do they want this? Why are they interested? What are they trying to accomplish? Why do you say that? And they say, well, they've got a budget or they're trying. Well, why do they have a budget? When you can ask a why question one or two or three times and your salesperson can't give you the answer, they haven't dug deep enough. They haven't built a
Mm.
relationship right enough. They haven't figured out what makes that client tick, what brings a little bit of pain to the issue that makes somebody want to do something. And so, folks, if you're in that position and you're wondering whether these Sandler by the Ruby Group people could help at all, I would at least call. If you're not getting the answer to your why questions from your sales team, Matt, Rocco, and the team at Sandler by the Ruby Group, whether you're in Akron, Columbus, or Jacksonville, Florida, are the ones that are going to help you out. And they're going to give you some of those insights. And I'm saying this because I've been there. I know it, and I know the people at Sandler. That's what they live for. So I hope that you'll reach out to Matt, and I hope you reach out to the team and take a look and see if they can help your organization. Matt, thanks for being on the show.
Hey, great to be on. Thanks for the invite.
And thanks to the entire Sandler by the Ruby Group team for being a partner with the Purpose Under Pressure podcast. We've been doing this now. We're in our 7th season. Sandler by the Ruby Group has been alongside us every single episode from the very beginning until now. And it's just an amazing partnership. And I've said it
Yeah, we
before.
love what you're doing, Brian. We
I'm
love it.
so glad that you do, because Matt, I don't know if you know this story or not, but I knew Mike. And when I wanted to start the podcast, the Purpose Under Pressure podcast, I said, Mike, this isn't for sale. I want you to do it. And he said, why? And
Mm,
I said, because you guys are everything this show is about. It's about doing things the right way, even when it gets hard, never giving up, never saying, nope, I'll take a shortcut. And that's what Sandler by the Ruby Group to me is all about. And when Mike said, yeah, we're in, it forced me to raise the level of the show up a little bit. But hopefully it also reminds you guys of why you're doing this too. So that's what it's
absolutely.
all about. That's Matt Rocco. We were so glad that he's a part of our show and our guest today on Purpose Under Pressure. It's brought to you by Sandler by the Ruby Group. Sellers are under pressure to perform, and Sandler helps you to succeed on purpose. You'll find all past episodes of Purpose Under Pressure at brianmediastrategies.com/podcast and wherever you stream your favorite shows. We do this every week, and we will see you next time on Purpose.